There's a moment that happens to certain people, and if you know exactly what I'm talking about, you probably felt it long before you ever had words for it. You walk into a room, and instantly something feels off. Nobody says anything, everybody's smiling, the conversation sounds normal. But somewhere underneath all of it, your system catches something, a tension, a crack in the energy, a mismatch between what people are saying and what they're actually feeling. And the strange part is this: most people around you don't notice it at all. Now, for years, your entire life, you were told that this was a problem. You were told you think too much, feel too much, read too deeply into things. Maybe people called you emotional, dramatic, overly sensitive. And if you hear something enough times, eventually you start believing it. You start trying to become less aware, less tuned in. You start apologizing for instincts that were never wrong in the first place. But here's what almost nobody explains correctly. Sensitivity is not weakness. Sensitivity is information. And there's a huge difference between those two things. Most people move through life filtering out emotional data automatically. Their nervous system deletes it before it even reaches conscious awareness. That's why some people can sit in a toxic relationship for years and never fully understand why they feel exhausted all the time. It's why some people ignore obvious manipulation until the damage is already done. Their system filters the signals out because that's how they're built. But a smaller group of people process almost everything. Tiny changes in tone, facial expressions that don't match the words being spoken, sudden shifts in energy, the emotional temperature of a room. Your system notices it immediately. And if you've lived like this long enough, you probably know how exhausting that can feel. Because when nobody around you sees what you see, you eventually start doubting yourself. And this is where things start getting interesting. Think about your life for a second. Think about the people who hurt you the most, the manipulative ones, the charming ones, the people who smiled while quietly rewriting reality around you. I guarantee you there were moments early on where something inside you noticed the inconsistency. Maybe you ignored it. Maybe you talked yourself out of it. Maybe everybody else liked them, so you assumed the problem had to be you. But your system noticed. It always notices first. That feeling you get before your mind catches up? That's not anxiety. That's pattern recognition. Your nervous system is constantly collecting data beneath conscious awareness. Every betrayal you survived taught your system a pattern. Every manipulative conversation trained your instincts. Every emotionally unsafe environment sharpened your ability to detect subtle danger long before it became obvious. The painful part is most people don't realize this until much later. You paid for those lessons with experience, and experience changes the nervous system permanently. A person who grew up around unpredictable anger becomes extremely skilled at reading emotional shifts. A person who spent years around dishonest people learns to detect inconsistencies instantly. Someone who is constantly gaslit develops an almost surgical awareness of tone, body language, and hidden intention. Now, here's the important part. Most people think those experiences only damage them, but that's incomplete. Yes, painful experiences hurt you, but they also trained you. They developed abilities in you that cannot be taught in a classroom. Nobody can hand somebody that kind of perception artificially. It gets built through exposure, through survival, through adaptation. And once you understand that, your entire past starts looking different. Suddenly the years of overthinking make sense. The exhaustion makes sense. The way crowded environments drain you makes sense. The reason chaotic people affect you so deeply makes sense. Your nervous system isn't malfunctioning. It's operating at high sensitivity all the time. Now here's the problem. If someone has a highly tuned detection system but never learns how to use it correctly, that perception turns inward. It becomes anxiety, hypervigilance, overanalysis, emotional exhaustion, because energy that has no direction always starts collapsing back onto itself. Imagine a smoke detector that goes off constantly but nobody listens to it. Eventually the batteries get removed. The alarm becomes background noise. That's exactly what happens to sensitive people who spend years ignoring their own instincts. They override themselves so many times that they slowly lose trust in their internal signals altogether. And that is one of the biggest tragedies I see in highly perceptive people. Not that they feel deeply, but that they were trained to distrust what they feel. Now, let me explain something that changes everything once you really understand it. Your nervous system was not designed to absorb endless emotional information without purpose. It was designed to detect patterns that matter, to notice what others miss, to recognize danger before it becomes visible, to feel shifts in people before those shifts become actions. That's why sensitive people often become the emotional center of groups without realizing it. People open up to them quickly. Strangers tell them personal things. Friends come to them during difficult moments. Because whether they consciously understand it or not, people feel seen around someone whose awareness is this developed. But the strange irony is the person who understands everybody else is usually the one who feels least understood themselves. And if that's been your experience, listen carefully. Your perception is not the problem. Your lack of boundaries is the problem. There's a massive difference. Sensitive people often absorb emotions instead of observing them. That's why certain conversations drain you for hours afterward. You don't just notice other people's emotional states, you internalize them. You carry them in your body like they belong to you. But one of the biggest shifts that happens during emotional maturity is this. You learn the difference between detecting an emotion and owning it. You can notice someone's anxiety without becoming anxious yourself. You can recognize anger in a room without carrying that anger home with you. You can sense dishonesty without needing to fix or confront it immediately. That changes everything. Because once somebody develops that separation, sensitivity stops feeling like a curse and starts functioning like intelligence. And this is usually the turning point in people's lives. There comes a moment where highly perceptive people stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking a much more useful question. What is my system trying to show me? That question changes the entire direction of your life. Because now discomfort becomes information instead of self-judgment. Now your instincts become data instead of weakness. Now your emotional reactions become signals instead of flaws. And once that shift happens, your relationships start changing too. You stop ignoring red flags just because somebody is charismatic. You stop forcing yourself to stay comfortable around people your nervous system clearly doesn't trust. You stop apologizing for noticing inconsistencies. You stop needing external validation for what your intuition already knows. That's real power. Not becoming emotionless, not becoming cold, but becoming accurate. There's a reason some people can sense manipulation almost immediately while others fall for it repeatedly. The difference is not intelligence, it's sensitivity combined with awareness. Now, I want you to think about something honestly. How many times in your life were your instincts right before your mind had proof? How many times did you feel something early and ignore it because you didn't want to seem paranoid or difficult? How many situations damaged you because you overrode your own nervous system trying to be polite? Most people don't realize this, but your body notices danger long before your conscious mind catches up. Your nervous system processes information faster than thought does. That strange tension you feel around certain people, that heaviness in specific environments, that sudden discomfort when someone's words and energy don't match. Your system is responding to patterns before your logical brain organizes them into language. And when you ignore those signals consistently, you disconnect from one of the most powerful internal guidance systems you have. Now, does that mean every uncomfortable feeling is correct? No, of course not. Trauma can distort perception too. But there's a huge difference between trauma-driven fear and intuitive pattern recognition. Trauma screams, intuition whispers. Trauma creates panic. Intuition creates clarity. One feels chaotic, the other feels quietly persistent. And the more someone learns to regulate themselves emotionally, the easier it becomes to tell the difference between those two signals. That's why healing matters so much for sensitive people. Not because healing makes you less emotional, but because healing makes your perception cleaner. When your nervous system is overloaded constantly, everything starts feeling dangerous. But once someone develops emotional regulation, their perception sharpens dramatically. They stop reacting impulsively and start observing accurately. That's when sensitivity becomes an advantage instead of a burden. And this is something society almost never teaches properly. The world rewards people who override themselves, push through exhaustion, ignore instincts, stay quiet in unhealthy environments, tolerate disrespect to keep the peace. Most people are conditioned to disconnect from their internal signals very early in life. Sensitive people simply feel the cost of that disconnection faster than others do. That's why certain environments destroy you, while other people seem unaffected. Your system refuses to normalize what isn't healthy. And while that can feel isolating sometimes, it's actually protective once you understand how to work with it instead of against it. You were never designed to thrive in environments that constantly violate your nervous system. No human being is. You just notice it sooner. Now here's where all of this leads. At some point, highly perceptive people have to stop seeing themselves as victims of their sensitivity and start becoming stewards of it instead. Because perception without direction becomes suffering, but perception with purpose becomes wisdom. Your experiences trained you for something, not in some mystical fantasy way, in a practical nervous system pattern recognition way. Every difficult relationship sharpened discernment. Every betrayal strengthened your ability to detect incongruence. Every emotionally chaotic environment taught your system to read energy rapidly. None of that pain was meaningless. And once you stop framing your past purely as damage, you stop carrying it the same way. Now your history becomes calibration instead of shame. Now your sensitivity becomes intelligence instead of weakness. Now your awareness becomes useful instead of overwhelming. And the craziest part is this: the thing you spent most of your life trying to suppress may actually be the thing that protects you, guides you, and allows you to help other people more deeply than most ever can. Because people who've suffered consciously often develop extraordinary perception, not because pain is magical, but because pain forces awareness. It forces observation. It forces adaptation. And if you survive it without becoming numb, you come out the other side able to see things other people miss entirely. So the next time your instincts speak to you quietly, listen. The next time your body feels tension around someone whose words sound perfect, pay attention. The next time an environment drains your nervous system constantly, stop asking whether you're too sensitive and start asking whether that environment is healthy for you in the first place. That single shift changes everything. Because the goal was never to become less aware. The goal was to finally understand what your awareness is actually for. And once you understand that, your entire life starts making a different kind of sense.